Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I thought today we'd actually get back to looking at some orchids. I've got to water all my cooler, shadier ones and as many of the pots as I can put up with doing. I did the mounts and the holy clay pots yesterday, so it's what's left, which is quite a lot. So I'll see if I can pick up on some things as I go round. There might be nothing, but I'll see if we've got any spikes that weren't there last time. I mean, it's not far off a week since I looked at the orchids, so there could be some changes. It's nice to see my ones that went to Malvern back again. Wedding Bell, no S, is these colours deepen as they age, which is, some orchids fade. These get deeper and deeper in colour, especially the lip. So these are actually looking at their best just before they fall off. But still in bloom. The Miltoniopsis Her Alexander's looking nice. Shelob's back. I've got to get all that small bark off the top. That is tiny seedling bark that they've dressed that with, so I'll just tip the pot over and let all that fall out. My Infundibulum crossed with Lowii, that's back again, so that's nice. And my Miltoniopsis, the yellow one. That's not fading, that's still holding its colour, so I'm pleased with that. I think somebody's posted a picture of a yellow Miltoniopsis on the Facebook group that I believe is identical. Don't know whether they've got a name for it, but I haven't. And the little Cattleyar's back. That's opened another few blooms while it was away. There's only one to go now. That is a lovely little miniature Cattleya. Lovely. That opens a paler yellow and then gradually deepens. I think the first bloom that opened last year actually turned almost orange. And it seems to be heading in that direction, but the lip stays yellow, so a bit of a colour change there. And the Friedrichianum's back. For a reason I'm not saying yet, that plant had to come down off the stand, and I had to take a few of the blooms off. I had to make it look as good as it possibly could. I'll explain that later. My Psychopsis is opening up with another bloom. Not fully open yet, but that was just a bud when I left, so we'll have the really bright colours of that soon. That's looking nice. And as I say, as I go round, if I pick up on anything that's significantly changed, we'll have a look, and we'll see where we go from there. This Miltoniopsis is pushing on its spike quite nicely. It's only going to have 3 blooms, but all the buds are progressing, so they're not going to blast. They'll open in turn, no doubt. That's Junette, so that's a pale yellow one that then fades after it opens. It's a reasonable yellow when it opens, but by the time it's aged, it ends up almost white. But yeah, the spike's pushed on a bit. The buds are quite a lot larger than when I last looked, so that's coming on. And sometimes things grow so good, it's too good for their own good. I'm going to have to do something with this fern. The new leaves on this are starting to get all over the top of the plants and encroach on my table. The leaves have never come up above this table before, but it's a shame because these are all the new leaves, but they're in my way now, and they're providing a heavy shade into an area where I could do with a bit more light. So I'm going to have to find somewhere else to put that. It's a pity, it's growing really well, it obviously likes being in here, but it's going to have to go somewhere else, and I don't know where else to put it at the moment. But I'm going to take it out for now because it's getting in my way, and then I'll have a think about. I'd like to bring it back in here, but wherever I put it, it's probably going to be in the way. I'll have a think. Now the Dracula Bella is carrying on its party piece by blasting the buds, but I've got one that looks like it's going to hang in there. I've got no guarantees, but that one's got an awful lot bigger than any of the others have. Now you can see they're blasting at quite an early stage, and this one may be pushing on as well. We might get a bloom. It's growing well, it's doing new growths and pushing out spikes just on a regular basis, so it's a good plant, it's growing nicely, but failing to bloom at the moment, but maybe we're going to get one now. Just for a bit of variety, a very fast chat about feed. I listen to Rick and apply. I can't do what Rick does. We grow in different environments. Effectively, he could be feeding every day, and from what he says, even twice a day. Well, I'm watering my normal pots at the moment. They get watered every 5 or 6 days. So to vary my mix takes quite a lot of time. I can't do it at that sort of rate. You know, I haven't got the heat to dry the pots out that fast. I do vary it, and I mean, for instance, this feed, this is MSU as a base, so that went in 125 parts per million. I then put the calcium nitrate in, took it up to 185 parts per million, and then added a bit of seaweed and took it up to 210 parts per million. That's still relatively a low feed, certainly compared with quite a few at the orchid societies I belong to. But I'm happy with that level. Things are growing, you know, they haven't got wishy-washy growths or anything. They're all pushing on okay, and that diet will vary. This time they had MSU plus the calcium nitrate and seaweed. Next time they'll probably get MSU plus some calcium nitrate. This is growing season stuff, yeah? Add the nitrogen in, get the growing going with the calcium to back it up. I'm happy with that. I don't even need to debate that. The logic is there. But because I added seaweed this time, next time I'll probably add some magnesium sulfate. The varied diet, not the same thing over and over again. A little bit of this, little bit of that, change it here, change it there. And I think that would probably be closer to nature. You know, when a plant's getting rained on and stuff's washing down the trees and things, it's not going to be the same all the time. I mean, if it rains hard for a very long time, by the end of the rainstorm, it's practically clear water. But they'll have taken in the initial stuff. This is the thing. The plants dry out quite quick in their natural environment. Certainly the sort of epiphytes that we would naturally grow. I'm not on about the montane forest dwellers. That's a different ball game altogether. They never dry out. But you get that wet-dry cycle. So when it's been dry, your roots are dry, or dry-ish. And then the rains start. That's probably the highest level feed they get. And the roots are designed to grab it. Well, let's say this, the velamen is designed to grab it and get it in there. Once it's full, and then the little tiny root inside can help itself to what it needs. Yeah? But a reasonably constant supply makes sense to me, because certainly in the rainy season, that's what the plants would be getting. So that's my current theory. I'll probably carry on with this idea through the growing season. The only hassle I get is when I add the seaweed. It drops my pH like a flipping stone. It's the only time I ever have to raise my pH. And again, I did a little test the other day on something that's growing in pure moss. Now that's the moss out of the packet, so that's dead stuff. It may do its zombie moss thing and bits of it come back to life. That's debatable. But at the end, this is you know, a dead moss. And I had a plant that was in pure moss, and I flushed it. Now that would have a TDS of 10 or 9 and a pH of 6.97, and the water that came out the bottom was 6.1. That's on one plant. Now if I'd used that water again on another one growing in moss, we'd be heading down to the danger levels. Yeah, so I've got to seriously watch the few plants that I've got in pure moss. They need watering in isolation. Yeah, so that I don't accumulate a drop in pH. I can do that, that's okay. It's not many, it's only a few. But then a lot of my pots have got a combination of bark and moss. The moss that's in with that bark's going to do the same thing, but slower, because it's a mix. Yeah. So again, if my pot's going to stay wet for 4 or 5 days, and it goes in at a high pH, you know, 6.8, 6.9, the moss will then interact with it and start dropping the moisture, the pH of the moisture that's left. So the pots vary the pH for me. I just hope it's not getting too low by the time they're, you know, almost dry and need watering again. But they will get that variety of pH. So pots that are a mixture of bark and moss, for me, are never getting watered with a low pH, because it's then going to drop in the pot. You see what I mean? And I don't want it dropping off the bottom of the range. So that's the theory for this growing season. And obviously as things slow down in the autumn, that will change. Feed levels and feed content will change. There's no good stonking up a plant with extra nitrogen if it's finished growing for the season. You're wasting your time. You just well pour it down the flipping sink. Yeah. And if you're not adding the extra nitrogen in, you possibly don't need anywhere near as much calcium as long as you've got some. And my MSU has a reasonable amount, and it has more than enough for plants that are doing very little. Yeah, so the calcium stuff is for cell production. You know, when things are growing, they need strength, they need rigidity, they need sturdiness. Yeah, that's what the calcium helps with. Well, if they're not doing anything, they've finished doing all their stuff for the year, they're not going to need as much. And at that point, my MSU has more than enough. So the feed variety will tail off dramatically as the growing season finishes. So that's what I'm up to at the moment, but talking about it doesn't get it done, does it? Now, this is my giant Sotoanum, Oncidium Sotoanum. Difficult to believe that's the parent of the Twinkles, or one of them. But this is the first new growth to mature, and we spotted a while ago that we did have a spike starting. Well, true to form, there's another spike on the other side of the bulb. So if this latest growth has got 2 spikes, I suspect some of the others will have when they get to maturity. Now, I've got a bit of a problem with this plant. This is so vigorous, it's actually drying in between the watering cycles. So it's not getting watered often enough. I mean, it's not losing its roots or anything like that, but it gets this stalling effect. This is the crinkle. That's nothing to do with lack of water. It's to do with an inadequate supply at periods of time. It's a stop-start mechanism. So when something's actively growing and then it stops because it's run out of food and water, it puts a crink. And then when it gets its food and water, it starts growing again. That's what the crinkle thing is. And this is the only plant I've got it on. And it's just literally growing faster than I can keep up with it at the moment. So I will have to keep up with it. I've even got a new growth over here that's not growing as well as it should be. So, and that's me, you know, so just going to have to water it a bit more often, single it out away from the others. It's the only one that dries absolutely dry in between the watering cycles. No huge effect. I mean, you know, other leaves have got no crinkles in them. It's just a couple. So we need to get that one fed and watered a bit more often. But 2 spikes so far, and 3 or 4 other new growths pushing on at various stages. So I don't know how long these spikes take to grow, because it was in bloom when I got it. So I haven't got a clue. If it's anything like the Twinkles, ages, but we shall see. You'll have to excuse the clutter, but I've got a sort of new way of watering. As I take the plants off, I take their tray off and put it up there because it's dry, then water the plant, put it back in its tray, and I don't have to put them on the floor. Because the problem with putting them on the floor is bending down to put them on the floor and then bending down again to pick them up for each one. Yeah, so I've managed to find a way of keeping me back straight most of the time. Anyway, this is one of our project plants. This is the Miltonia Sunset that was really seriously bad with Fusarium. 3 pieces, a couple of back bulbs and a new growth in each case. And we have a spike coming on one growth and a spike coming on another growth. The other growth's quite a bit behind, it always was, but I'd suggest that's a good root system. It's cured, it's on the mend, and it's now going to bloom. The fact that it's a disturbed plant healing itself It has got a good root system, but I suspect, excuse the noise, that's the workman, I suspect it'll only have a couple of blooms. Might only even have one, but at least it's got there. So I'd say that was recovered now. Pretty good stuff. Now this is a strange one. It's a species Oncidium, and its natural growth pattern seems to be just one bulb after another. Maybe one day I'll get 2 new growths off the same bulb, but this is the one that's got my name in it. It's Oncidium varicosum rogersii balding, and every bit of that has changed. It's no longer an Oncidium, it's not varicosum, and it's lost its rogersii. And I think it's probably lost its balding, so it's completely changed. But this, on another plant, if I saw a spike coming on a plant like this, I would take the spike off to put the strength in the plant. But that's how this one grows. So we've got a spike on that one. I wasn't there last time I looked. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to get a bulb as big as that. My bulbs seem to be this big and consistent. Well, consistent I'm okay with, but I'm still looking at the potential. Once upon a time it did that, yeah, but it's bloomed on every growth with bulbs that size, so I'm sort of happy with it. But anyway, we've got a spike. Well, this is a bit sad. I think this is lost. This was my Solatoria type Roy Tokunaga White Knight, and it was one of my favourites, I must admit, but it's aborted all 3 of its latest growths. Now it's all very well saying, oh, it's not getting enough, or it's not getting enough of this and this, that and the other. It's not getting enough of anything. It's got no roots. All the roots that were on the bottom of there are effectively inactive or dead. So I potted it in the hope that it would grow some roots. But so far all it's done is new growths, and there's still no sign of new roots. If it can get some roots going and then produce a new growth, it might come on, but I got a feeling I've lost that one. It's a shame. That's that flipping heat wave last year and keeping it too soggy in the winter when it was cold. Most of the Latorias suffered that way, but most of them are also recovering nicely. This one isn't. As I say, I think that one's lost now. Well, this spike's pushing on. Feeling that's grown 3 inches since I last looked at that when I watered it. This is the Catatanti, and it's growing well, and it's got a good root system now, so its latest growth is very close to the size of the previous, so I'm pleased with that. And we've got a spike. Whether it's going to be the best spike I've ever had, I don't know, but at least we've got one. Well, this is my Encyclia prismatocarpa, a notorious non-bloomer. At one point it was pushing out 2 leads each time and forming a little sheath, and they never bloomed. That sheath has got a spike in it because it's stiff. It's not all floppy like it is at the end. So I think finally I've got a prismatocarpa bloom, and on the one that's about to bloom is a stonking new growth pushing up. So yeah, so that one's changed a bit since I last looked. That'll be good. If it produces a good spike, it's a good tall spike with should be quite a lot of blooms and incredibly fragrant, which is why I got it. I'll let you know. But at least it looks like a spike's on that one. Whoopee! Okay, for reasonably obvious reasons, I'm going to pack the filming in today. I've got as far as there with the ordinary pots, if you can hear me, and what I'll do is next time I'm watering the ordinary pots, we'll start from here and go round. But I think what they've done is they've got all the big paving slabs in, and they're doing all the ones they need to cut, so that racket's going to go on possibly for the rest of the day. So I'll see you next time. Bye for now. It's necessary noise, they got to do the work, can't really complain. See you next time.